Hey everyone and welcome back. In the last video, we went over how to add adjustments non-destructively using adjustment layers. Continuing on the subject of non-destructive editing, this video is going to cover the wonderful world of layer masks. Think of a layer mask as a non-destructive eraser. You're soon going to be able to remove parts of your layer and still have the ability to bring them back later on in your edit. The basic rule of thumb for layer masks is that everything black will be hidden, while everything white will remain visible. This first example will demonstrate exactly how a layer mask works in its simplest form. In the Layers panel, I have the background layer selected. First, let's convert it to an editable layer by holding down Alt or Option and then double-clicking on the layer. Good. Now to show you the traditional way of removing parts of an image, I'm going to grab my eraser tool, or shortcut key E, and simply erase the areas of this image that I want removed. Now, just like applying an adjustment from the Adjustments menu, the original image is being modified, which means unless you have a duplicate of your image, you can't bring back those erased areas later on. Certainly not a smart way to edit. Now let's look at layer masks. There's a few ways to add a layer mask to your image, but the quickest way is to click on the Add Layer Mask icon at the bottom of your Layers panel. Notice that when the icon is clicked, a white box is added to the active layer. This is your layer mask. As I mentioned before, black is hidden, white is visible, so at the current time, the layer's contents are 100% visible. Now that the layer mask has been added, instead of using the eraser tool, brushes can be used instead to paint the areas that I want to hide. So with a black brush active, painting on the layer will hide the areas that are no longer needed. The result looks exactly the same as it did when I used the eraser, so what's the big difference? Well, now, because a layer mask is being used to hide the unwanted areas, at any point in the future you want to bring those areas back, you can simply switch to a white brush and paint them back in. It's as simple as that. Let's look at another example. If you remember in the last video when we discussed adjustment layers, I mentioned that there was one more feature that I held off talking about. Hopping back to the first image that we used in that video, I'm going to go ahead and add a hue and saturation adjustment layer, and then adjust the hue until we have a nice funky effect. So here's the question. If we were working with only one layer and want the adjustment to be applied to a specific part of our image, how can that be done? Well, if you take a look at the adjustment layer that was just added, you may notice that a layer mask has also been added as well. This allows us to control which portions of the adjustment is hidden and what remains visible. In a situation like this, you have to ask yourself which area is larger, the portion that you want hidden or visible. In this case, the area that I want hidden is larger, so it's actually easier to start with the whole adjustment hidden. To do this, make sure that the layer mask is selected, and then fill your document with black. If black is your background color, which you can do by pressing the D key on your keyboard, and then if you're on your Mac, hold down your Command key and press Delete. If you're on Windows, hold down Control and press Backspace. This will completely hide the adjustment, allowing you to now use a white brush to paint in the areas that you want visible again. Of course, if you're working with a complex area and you prefer to create a selection instead of using a brush, you're free to do so as well. Once the selection's made, filling it with white will reveal the hidden adjustment. So, now that a layer mask has been added and defined, what else can you do with it? Well, let's start simple. Right-clicking on the layer mask's thumbnail in your Layers panel will allow you to disable or completely delete the layer mask. When disabled, the layer mask turns off as if it were never added. So anything that was hidden will now be visible again. If you want to re-enable it, you can either right-click again, or hold down your Shift key and click on the layer mask's thumbnail. You can also delete the layer mask completely by either selecting Delete Layer Mask in the menu, or simply dragging it to the trash icon at the bottom of your Layers panel. Another helpful feature that's available when dealing with your layer mask is the option to refine the mask. For example, if you masked out an area using a hard brush, and now want the edges of the mask a bit softer, refining the mask can help achieve that. When the layer mask is selected, up in your Properties panel you can see the Refine Mask settings. The two options that are initially visible are Density and Filter. Density is almost like contrast, where a higher value produces a greater separation between white and black. Decreasing the density washes out the mask, resulting in a less effective result. Feather will help soften out your edges. As you increase the feather radius, the edges of your mask become softer and softer. But if that still isn't enough, you also have access to the Refine Mask tool, which is just like Refine Edge, which you saw a few videos back. The nice thing about layer masks is that they can be added to pretty much any type of layer, from text to vector shapes and even groups. So at any point you want to hide a portion of your layers, don't grab the eraser. Add a layer mask instead. In the next video, we're going to take a look at another fantastic non-destructive tool, Smart Objects.